There is a turning point in many people's lives that rarely looks dramatic from the outside. It is the day you stop arguing with what you already know. Long before your conscious mind can articulate a problem, your body and your nervous system have been quietly gathering information. You've probably felt this. You walk away from a perfectly polite conversation feeling unexpectedly small, or you stay in a relationship long after your instincts whisper that something essential is gone. Yet, instead of trusting that subtle intelligence, we learn to explain it away. We tell ourselves we're overthinking, that we should give them the benefit of the doubt, or that we are simply being too sensitive. The Swiss psychiatrist Carl Jung observed that this habit of doubting our own reality creates a deep internal split. He believed that many of our worst forms of psychological suffering do not arise directly from external pain, but from becoming inwardly divided against ourselves, when one part of you sees the truth, and another part insists on a version of reality that feels safer. This split usually begins as a highly effective survival mechanism in childhood. Imagine a young child with an unpredictable caregiver, warm and affectionate one moment, then distant or completely frightening the next. To a developing psyche, deciding that the person responsible for their survival is unsafe is terrifying. It is far easier for the child to conclude that they are the problem. They sacrifice certainty in their own perception in order to preserve a vital connection. The British psychoanalyst Donald Winnicott described this exact adaptation through what he called the false self. When our authentic responses are repeatedly ignored or unsafe to express, we construct a highly agreeable, attentive persona. We learn the emotional weather of everyone else so well that we lose track of our own. Many people reach adulthood highly skilled at reading rooms, anticipating conflict, and adjusting themselves to meet the needs of others. This sensitivity reflects hypervigilance. It is an adaptation where safety depends entirely on monitoring what others feel before we are allowed to feel ourselves. Over time, maintaining this false self exhausts the psyche. You are asking your own mind to continuously deny its own data, and whatever is pushed into the unconscious doesn't disappear. It waits. It often returns in repeated, painful life patterns, the same one-sided friendships, the same burnout, until you are finally ready to look at what remains unseen. Jung described this as projection, encountering the world through a landscape of unresolved wounds. Our fears, unmet longings, and historical injuries color our perception, making it difficult to encounter another person as they truly are. This dynamic makes it difficult to separate trauma-induced hypervigilance from actual discernment. Hypervigilance is driven by fear. It feels urgent, constantly scanning for danger and forcing immediate conclusions. Discernment is patient. It observes small inconsistencies and allows patterns to emerge naturally, without rushing to interpret every shift in a room's temperature. For those accustomed to doubting themselves, there is a quieter opposite danger, absorbing other people's projections. When you lack inner clarity, someone else's discomfort easily becomes your self-doubt. Their inability to be honest becomes your responsibility to explain, and you carry the weight of an inconsistency that never belonged to you. Our unacknowledged truth repeats patterns of controlling relationships or severe burnout, forcing itself into the light until we finally choose to meet it. Carl Jung understood that these ignored parts of ourselves enter what he called the shadow. Beyond dark traits like cruelty or aggression, the shadow holds every virtue that conscious personality has decided is unsafe to express, including joy, confidence, and healthy anger. If you grow up believing anger makes you unlovable, you exile it completely. From the outside, you appear limitlessly patient, but anger, at its healthiest, is an internal alarm system. It tells us a line has been crossed. Without it, we mistake endless self-destructive accommodation for compassion. Jung used the anthropological term participation mystique to describe this psychological state, where emotional boundaries remain largely unconscious. In this enmeshed state, if someone enters a room anxious, you suddenly become anxious. If they withdraw, you instinctively assume you caused it, living inside everyone else's emotions, carrying a weight that was never ours. This creates a frantic need to scan every room for danger. True discernment moves differently. It is patient and curious. It notices the same rustling leaves in the forest, but it waits to see if it's the wind or a predator before reacting. It refuses to let anxiety become its only lens. We frequently mistake this deep enmeshment for compassion, but a physician cannot cure a patient by becoming equally ill. Healthy care requires differentiation. It is the ability to remain connected to someone without being consumed by their emotional state. Developing this psychological differentiation requires boundaries. People often confuse boundaries with walls, but they serve very different functions. Walls isolate you from the outside world. Boundaries simply distinguish where you end and someone else begins. This animated diagram illustrates how that constraint functions in nature. Without banks, a river disperses across the landscape until its direction is lost entirely. The banks do not imprison the water. By constraining it, they give the current its shape, its force, and its ability to flow. That the moment you honor your own perception and establish these banks for yourself, you disrupt a careful balance. Every social structure unconsciously seeks equilibrium. When you change your shape, the entire system has to reorganize to accommodate your new honesty. This process is often uncomfortable. People who loved the version of you that continually abandoned its own needs may find your new boundaries abrasive. Family dynamics shift, conversations change. Often, relationships rooted entirely in who you used to be will quietly dissolve. At first, this loss feels like a personal failure. In reality, it is a kind of structural accuracy. Psychological maturity involves the clarity to pause and distinguish internal experience from external noise. It allows us to ask, what belongs to this room and what belongs to me? Jung called this lifelong process of reclaiming our forgotten parts individuation. It involves the slow, often uncomfortable work of allowing your life to become truthful and undivided. The process of individuation demands a lonely transition. You have to stop seeking external permission and learn to rely on your own lived experience, even when it disappoints the expectations you inherited. Carl Rogers, a founder of humanistic psychology, used the word congruence to describe this alignment. Congruence is the state of psychological health where your internal, lived experience precisely matches your outward expression to the world. Incongruence manifests when we smile while grieving or say yes while meaning no. Maintaining this distance requires immense effort. It resembles trying to hold a beach ball deep beneath the surface of the water. At first, it seems manageable, but keeping that pressure steady exhausts your arms. The psyche operates similarly. Suppressed knowledge and ignored intuition do not vanish, they wait. Over time, asking the mind to continuously deny what it knows builds incredible pressure. Eventually, that pressure bursts upward with surprising force. As we move toward this congruence, Jung observed that we develop the transcendent function. This is the mature capacity to hold opposing inner tensions, like holding both boundaries and love, or strength and tenderness, without rushing to eliminate the conflict. The philosopher Viktor Frankl noted that between any stimulus and our response, there is a space, and within that space lies our freedom. Individuation is the gradual widening of that space. Instead of reacting automatically to criticism or misunderstanding, you learn to pause and respond consciously. Joseph Campbell found this exact trajectory in myths across the world. The hero leaves the familiar, faces difficult truths, and inevitably returns. Transformation is never meant to isolate you. You return to the community carrying hard-won discernment, capable of offering a wiser, grounded form of compassion. You can see this logic in any healthy ecosystem. A forest does not build resilience by forcing every tree to grow in identical ways. Its stability emerges through diversity. Each distinct organism contributes to the whole precisely by expressing its own true nature. This natural alignment is a central theme in the Tao Te Ching. It suggests that genuine psychological authority resembles water. It yields to obstacles, yet remains persistent enough to carve stone. It adapts to the landscape without ever abandoning its core nature. Becoming fully human is the lifelong, courageous practice of stripping away the noise. This stripping away uncovers the undivided self that has been observing, feeling, and waiting there all along. Growth requires shedding the connections that cannot survive your authenticity. Psychological authority arrives as the quiet, steady courage to stop abandoning your own experience simply because it makes someone else uncomfortable. By finally establishing those boundaries and belonging to ourselves, we experience the return. Instead of offering exhausted accommodation, we can finally offer the world genuine, rooted compassion. Becoming more fully human requires a lifelong practice of remaining honest enough to keep asking, "Who have I been all along, beneath everything I have learned to abandon?" If you enjoyed this exploration, subscribe to our Human Atlas, because understanding the quiet truths within ourselves is how we learn to stop abandoning each other and find our truest place within the larger living world.